everyone, I'm Laura. Welcome back to my channel, The Woken Mind. I'm here today with a collective update on masculine and feminine energy. So I'm gonna jump into this video by talking about the new earth. And I titled this video New Year, New Earth because the truth is we're grounding the age of Aquarius in ways that we've never been able to ground before. And it's almost like it's sticking this time, right? I feel like there was a lot of trial and error over the last 5 years or so where these new energies were coming in and they were wanting to ground. And a lot of these higher frequency relationships, higher frequency businesses were coming in and they were super promising, right? But the energy couldn't stick because there was just way too much karma in the way. And so over the past 5 years, we've really been clearing a lot of that karma. And if you didn't see my last collective update, the end of year for 2023, you might want to go back and watch that. In that video, I talked about how this last Mercury retrograde was all about clearing out a lot of that old earth energy, specifically with old earth relationships that even went back to past life connections that were all about keeping money, power, material in certain bloodlines, people marrying because it was the best thing for their finances or for their family lineage, not from a place of love. And really what we see, how that's translated to connections, like present day connections, is people with each other because it's an ego connection, right? They fall in love with each other's egos. They like the appearance of the relationship. They like the wealth or just the image that's created with the relationship, but it doesn't actually feel good inside. And so a lot of those relationships came to an end towards the end of 2023. Of course, we're going to continue to clear out karma throughout 2024. That Mercury retrograde started in Capricorn energy and it ended in Sagittarius energy, which really allowed for this fiery energy to come through, this restlessness that allowed a lot of those really old energies and old relationships to get cleared out. And some of it was, like I talked about in the last video, some of it was a lot of disagreements and arguments. A lot of it was speaking truth and saying that, you couldn't tolerate certain things anymore. So those connections are clearing out. But I'm going to say that, throughout the rest of winter here in the Northern Hemisphere, there's still going to be a lot of clearing, especially on the masculine side, because this is a time of self-reflection. And what we're seeing with masculine energy in general right now, with the end of the retrograde on the 1st, we're now going into this period of self-responsibility with masculine energy. So there was this review that came up and a cutoff to any connections that did not feel right. And now there's a review of, kind of past mistakes, wrong turns. Nothing really truly is a wrong turn because it always leads to where we need to go, right? But making the same choices over and over again, getting caught in loops, and taking responsibility for those choices. That's what's coming in with the masculine energy. Again, self-responsibility and saying, okay, I can see my patterns now. I can see how I kept making these choices over and over again, and I no longer want to make those choices. And the rest of this winter, again, in the Northern Hemisphere, is all about really looking at all of the mistakes, all of the ways that we failed ourselves, and how we made choices that maybe were not in the highest alignment. And again, it's not about beating yourself up. Like I said, nothing really truly is a mistake because everything does eventually lead to where we need to go. But with this new earth, this age of Aquarius energy coming in really rapidly now in 2024, we don't want to keep taking the long turns or taking the turn towards the path that's going to be the long way around, right? We want to start getting on these quicker paths. Not to say that we're going to take shortcuts, because that's another issue with masculine energy, is that there's this desire to rush, rush, rush to the end without going through the entire process. And so the self-responsibility that's coming in with masculine energy now is all about, okay, I'm not going to rush, I'm not going to skip steps, but I'm also not going to take the really long, tedious, painful, actually like really painful routes. So I think that, in general, the masculine energy is the logical energy, right? So there's not like a lot of feeling and emotion in that energy, but we all have both. So as our masculine energy goes through this review of kind of like the old earth, what's going to happen is the feminine energy is going to have to process all of the emotions. And what I'm hearing for the feminine is that there's a lot of forgiveness work that has to happen. There's a lot of forgiveness towards self. So we have to forgive ourselves for making the choices that we made in the old earth, because they really were coming from a place of survival for the most part. And, what I'm hearing is things were so dense in those old earth systems and structures that it was like a threat to feel your feminine. And so a lot of us, either what we did, if you're an old soul and you were here in other lives, what you did is you either went completely into your distorted masculine and completely shut down your connection to your heart and your soul, or what you did is you had to go into hiding with your feminine energy. And so we want to get to this place where the feminine doesn't have to hide anymore. She could be seen, and where we don't feel like the only choice we have to thrive and be successful is to be in our distorted masculine. And so we have to offer forgiveness to ourselves in any way that we've allowed our ego to run the show, that we've made decisions not based off of how we feel in our bodies or how what's like best for our emotional stability. Anytime that we've gaslighted our own feminine energy, we need to offer forgiveness to the masculine energy, the feminine to the masculine. Now, this also plays out in relationships too, and it can play out in soul connections. So if you are in a relationship or you have a soul connection where you are dealing with distorted masculine energy, it's really important to offer forgiveness to the distorted masculine and the ways that he showed up in the old earth. Because what I'm hearing is that if the feminine continues to carry resentment towards the distorted masculine, that just keeps her in that loop, the old cycle, and it drags her down. So she needs to be looking forward and moving towards this higher frequency. And she can't do that if she's still got an attachment, because without forgiveness, there's still an attachment, right? And so we've got the new moon in Capricorn that's coming up on the 11th. And like I said, that's all about responsibility. And Capricorn is a great energy for building of businesses, building of foundation. But I'm hearing what's more important now than getting like a start on like a new relationship or a new business is creating a solid foundation so that that relationship or business that's going to come about probably like mid this year is where I'm seeing like a lot of new connections coming in, a lot of new businesses, new earth businesses really thriving. It's really important that all of this has like a really solid foundation so that we're not building on wobbly structures. And so, again, a lot of the clearing happened in these past 5 years, major clearing at the end of 2023. But also what then needs to happen now again during this review is with this sense of responsibility is like a commitment to self, that we aren't going to cling to the old patterns, and really believing in yourself, believing that you're capable of really achieving things that didn't feel possible in the past. And they didn't feel possible because the karmic energy was so heavy. And so there is this kind of new possibility feeling that's floating around in the collective. And again, that's coming from the feminine energy. I'm hearing like the sky's the limit type of energy coming from the feminine, the divine feminine. And so again, this has to do with like the feminine clearing any attachments to the old earth. So forgiving the distorted masculine so that she can get into that dreamlike state of manifesting through vision, because the feminine is the visionary, and desires and knowing what you deserve and what you're worthy of with the feminine energy of like highest timeline type energy. And again, as she releases ties with the distorted masculine in any way that he's shown up, right? So whether this is within you, with your own ego, or again with people that came into your life that were in the distorted masculine, the more she, again, releases that, it's like she cuts the ties and then she can float up even higher. And that's the energy that's going to lead us into the new earth. And again, with this masculine energy and the responsibility, some people, there's going to be just like a focus on self-responsibility. But for other people that are really working on grounding that divine masculine energy, there's going to be this sense of collective responsibility. And we need that so that we can really begin to birth some new earth leadership. And so those masculines and those of us with our own masculine energy that are feeling called to step into leadership, what we're going to feel is this sense of, instead of complaining about all the things that are happening with the world, saying, I think I know how we could fix this. And I think I know what gifts and talents I've been given that could actually offer some solutions for the collective. And so that's what's going to really bring about these new earth businesses and structures. And so if you felt like over the last 5 years that you were totally bogged down and completely overwhelmed by all of the trials in your own life, that you couldn't really see past your own karma, what I'm hearing is those of you that are really ready to start building in your divine masculine, you're going to feel like a weight's been lifted. Again, this review period may be a little bit heavy, maybe a little bit dense, but as we get closer to the spring equinox here in the Northern Hemisphere, a lot of people that are stepping into their divine masculine energy are going to feel like, hey, I don't feel like I have all this like heavy, dense karma from my childhood and from my past lives that I need to keep repeating. And now that I can see the choices that I made and how I don't want to make those choices anymore, not only do I want to make better choices for myself, but I also can see how I can now offer my services to the rest of humanity. So it's again like a very like fatherly energy, which makes a lot of sense that this is coming in with the Capricorn new moon, because that's very much like that Capricorn energy, the responsibility, the feeling like you want to protect and provide for others. It's a very beautiful energy, and that conscious father archetype is what we really need strongly here in the new earth, right? And so some people are going to step into that conscious father archetype and they're going to create conscious family systems, while other people are going to step into that conscious father archetype and they're going to step into service roles where they're going to be creating businesses and structures that are going to solve the problems and protect humanity in new ways that are more heart-centered. Because in its distortion, Capricorn energy can be very rigid, can be almost emotionless at times. I have a Capricorn moon, which can be really difficult because the moon is so much about your emotions, right? And so having a Capricorn moon makes me very analytical when it comes to emotions, maybe even a little bit, I want to say like disconnected sometimes which is great. At sometimes it's great because I can step back and I won't get like overly like taken over by emotions and can really process things. But if I go into my distorted Capricorn energy, it makes me just completely shut down the connection to my heart. And that is what we saw with the old earth distorted masculine, where he didn't have any sort of connection to the heart and the soul. And that is why all the systems and the structures were showing up in such a cold and rigid way. It was just like, follow the rules, and that is all that matters. And I'm hearing the 10 Commandments, like all of that, those like very rigid systems, like this is the law, and this is what we need to follow. And there was no like wiggle room, and there was like everyone was seen as the same. And it was like a very like cold, hard judgment. And I think we're getting away from that, especially, we're seeing that on the world stage where people are starting to see the perspective of multiple sides. And so they're also able to hold that perspective of like someone else or another group or another country, right, while holding their own perspective as well. And sometimes even if they clash, they're able to hold those two at the same time simultaneously. This is really new for humanity because it's not something that people have been able to do before. In general, the consciousness was very low in the old earth, and it was very much like us against them, us versus them. And if you don't agree with what I believe in, then you need to be destroyed. And so we're really moving past that. We're understanding that there can be two rights at the same time. Just because one person or one side is right doesn't mean the other side is wrong. And that's huge for humanity. And that's really going to allow us to get away from this timeline of where we go deeper into like war and conflict. And again, that needs to continue to get cleared out. We still have a lot of clearing to do, but those that are the way showers, the ones that are showing up in this new level of higher consciousness, that are able to, again, hold multiple perspectives at once and come from a place of love instead of this rigid, hard, old earth Capricorn energy. And, another thing that's coming in is that what you're going to find for those of you that are building businesses or going into purpose, because a lot of you that are feeling that conscious father archetype coming in with that responsibility, you are going to be called to go deeper into your purpose if you already are in purpose, or you may just walk into purpose now if you haven't yet started. What our purpose, I'm getting this download very strong, is our purpose is part of our healing. And so a lot of people are healing their patterns that they showed up with in past lives or earlier on in this present life. And they are taking responsibility and healing those patterns. And as they heal those patterns, they're then coming up with ways to teach or serve or help other people through that process of like unraveling their own karma. So let me explain this. Let me give like a little bit more of a solid explanation for this. So let's say, for example, and I probably need to do an entire new video on like starseed groups and things like that. I don't want to get too deep into that right now, but let's say that you are from like a starseed group, or let's just say if you're not into like starseed information like that, let's say that you come from a mindset where you're like very rigid, you're all about like creating systems, and you created like some really harsh structures in maybe your own personal routine. So maybe you were like really hard on yourself. I'm thinking like maybe like a really rigid fitness structure that you had, or you had like a really hard schedule where you really pushed yourself. Or you know that you're an old soul and you helped create a lot of these rigid systems and structures that we have in place now in some of your past lives. Part of your process of healing and stepping into purpose is actually breaking down some of those rigid systems and balancing things back out. I hope I'm explaining this in a way that makes sense, because it's coming in like very broad, and I want to make it very practical so that it makes sense on how you can apply this to your life. So basically, your purpose is your healing. And so for some of us, it's just healing things in our own life. So, like, let's say maybe you struggled with actually not being very responsible and not having a lot of structure in your life. Maybe part of then your purpose is showing up and teaching people how to be really structured. Maybe you'll be a coach, or maybe you'll create some sort of app that helps people organize their lives. So basically, what I'm saying is that it's like whatever you need to do to balance yourself out, then you extend that to the rest of humanity, and that is how you walk in your authentic purpose. So in this video, I've been speaking a lot about purpose, which makes sense because we're in that Capricorn energy. We're about to enter Capricorn, the Capricorn new moon on January 11th. So there's a lot of energy coming out around purpose, right? But I also want to talk a little bit about relationships. And so, this breakdown of these karmic relationships, which has been a major theme, like I said, it's really been going on for 5 years, but it came to this kind of like culmination at the end of 2023, and we're going to continue to see the fallout of anyone that's holding on to connections that are coming from a place of old earth energy. What's going to happen with this responsibility type of energy that's coming in with this Capricorn energy is it's going to take away from all of this like deflecting, projecting, blaming others. And so as these relationships break down and people claim their divine feminine or the divine masculine energy, what's going to come to the surface is the distorted energies as well. Because instead of like sweeping it under the rug and blaming the other person, you're going to have to look at how did you not show up in your fullness? How did you not show up in the most healthy versions of yourself? And instead of blaming your partner or the other person in the relationship, whether it's romantic or friendship, whatever it is, or job relationship, whatever it is, right? You then have to look at, okay, so like, why did I bring this into my life? What distorted masculine or feminine energies am I carrying that caused this relationship to hit this like breakdown point? And so the more people that acknowledge their distorted energies, the faster we can clear those energies out. And it's not to say that we're never going to drop into distorted energies. That's not reality here. We're not supposed to be perfect. But we want to make sure that we're operating primarily out of like this place of like wholeness and what I like to call the divine feminine or the divine masculine. And so we're always going to sway back and forth, but can we check ourselves and bring ourselves back to center? And so, calling out other people is powerful. Setting boundaries with other people is powerful, and it's a necessary part of the ascension process. But what's even more important is seeing the reflection of somebody else's distortions within yourself and seeing how you want to clean that up in yourself so that you are not perpetuating these cycles anymore. So again, that requires self-forgiveness, which is something I was speaking of. So if we want to forgive others, we also have to be able to forgive ourselves. And again, this self-reflection is going to continue throughout the winter months here in the Northern Hemisphere. And as we get closer to the equinox, there's going to be this like new birth energy. And it's going to, again, all this clearing is actually going to be so beneficial for the collective because everything that we've done over the last 5 years is creating like a very fresh, clean slate for the new earth. And it's going to allow, again, like I started the video and said, it's going to allow things to stick in ways that we've never seen them stick before. And so one of the things that I'm personally struggling with is like, I've had a lot of false starts over the past 5 years where I'm like, okay, this is it. This is really going to work out. And my feminine energy is like, really inspired, and she can come in with like all these creative ideas, and then I'll hit the ground running and it's like not time yet because the masculine hasn't cleared enough karma. And then I get frustrated and then I almost want to give up. And so we really want to make sure that the feminine energy stays in this place. Like I said, you know, she's the visionary, so she stays in this place of faith and hope and a trust that the earth truly is ascending and that humanity is growing and shifting, and that the masculine is going to be able to clear out all of this old dense karma, because the masculine's work really is to clear out the karma. And then he then ascends and meets the divine feminine, and the divine feminine meets the masculine in the middle. So she has to ground. So she has to get into this place of where she doesn't place the masculine beneath her or shame him for being in these old patterns and these old loops. She sees that she's an equal to the masculine. And so when they meet together as equals in this kind of like centered place, that's where we really create the new earth. So I really hope this video was helpful for you guys, and I'm sending you lots of love.